for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. Really do appreciate that, my friend. The Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do here on SOR on a nightly basis. So thank you, Todd, for kicking things off. Chris Miller, good to see you. The stunning Purpose and Grace. Ty Flynn Preston, welcome to our channel. Flash Forward, good to see you. The stunning Thin Lizzie Borden has returned. Millennium, nice to see you. Alien Critter, Carfanibre, good to have you back. And there's awesome Arlene Adkinzel. Pinzer Flactum, welcome to our channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate that. Uncle Dale and his Power Stash are here. If you are in Austin, Texas, and you see Uncle Dale, rub his Power Stash for good luck right through January 1st. All right, continuing on here on the roll call, there's Gorgeous Carol. Thank you for joining us. And Rooted in Stunning Sacredness, thank you for joining us. And who else do we have here? Swamp Dweller, how you doing, buddy? Nice to have the Swamp in the house. Yes, we're going to get to him momentarily. And who else is here? Moving on, there's Chad. Todd, thank you so much again for the Super Chat. National Memorial, good to see you. And we're going to have to wrap it up right there. Rose Demaray, looking lovely tonight. Here we go, everyone. Horns up. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. I gotta tell you, I got some really cool news on Instagram. Private message from one of our listeners. Now, you may not know the name of Crazy Hot Morgan, but she and her husband are like power lifters. They take part in these world's strongest competitions. All right? And like they're both like jacked and bulked and, you know, I mean, her husband's biceps are the size of Fap's head. I mean, to be absolutely blunt. But the other thing about Crazy Hot Morgan is she's a professional wrestler. And you know what's really cool? She sends me this picture of her in a wrestling match today, slamming this other lady into the mat. And the best part? She has named her finishing move the Spaced Out Slam. How cool is that? How cool is that? So, we have an official wrestling move called the Spaced Out Slam. You know how pumped up I am for this? Because one of the things, like growing up, I always thought like wrestling was awesome. Fantastic. So, Crazy Hot Morgan, big shout out to you for the Spaced Out Slam. I hope you pin that lady for 1, 2, 3 in order to make that happen. Because that sounds like a winning move right there. Now, let's get over to space here for a second. I don't know if any of you have seen it out there, but we have a new picture from Mars. Well, it's not so new. It actually came out in 2006. So if you saw the photo, and I apologize to our YouTube audience, I actually meant to put the photo up here, and I forgot. I did. So I will describe it. It is taken of Mars, and there is this strip that's supposed to be like a couple kilometers long, so about 2 miles, 3 kilometers. And this strip looks like, at the end, that there's a UFO at the end of it. So now the big debate is, number one, is this photo real? And number two, is this photo actually of a UFO crash on Mars? Now, when you zoom on in, it looks like a rock formation. It looks like there's pillars in there, and where the craft would be if you look at it from a distance, it doesn't look like a craft at all. It actually looks like a round building. So, if you get a chance, go online, check out this photograph. I want to know what you think. So when you check it on out, comment below if you're on our YouTube channel or on our social media on Twitter or wherever, and let us know what you think of that photo. I'll get Thin Lizzy to put something up with that photo on our new TikTok account. You can check it out there as well. So, yeah, you know what it's time for? It is time for us to get warmed up here before we bring in our guest, Stacy Horn. We got a new feature. It's called Swamped. Yes, our resident swamp dweller takes us into the night to give us some spooky stuff. So why don't we enter the swamp right now?
Hi, Spaced Out Radio listeners. This is Swamp Dweller. It's time for your nightly dose of spookiness on the show. If you have an interesting encounter or a spooky story that you would like to share, be sure to submit them in at swampdweller.net. You can also find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/swampdwellerreads. Now, let's chill out, relax, and together, let's enter the swamp.
I don't talk much about my job. And even with friends and family, I find myself not really knowing what to say because sometimes there are things that not everyone can understand, and this is why I came here. I'm pretty sure most of you will. And I thought you could also be interested in learning more about the place in which I work. You see, I'm a park enforcement patrol member. Basically, what I do is making sure, along with my colleagues, that the park is a safe and welcoming place to all visitors, and we also make sure that they follow our regulations. However, not all of our regulations appear on our website. This is for security reasons. So we must instruct visitors as soon as they arrive about our extra list of rules. Our park is a very nice place, actually, and there are amazing sights and landscapes to look at, but this doesn't mean there are no dangers. As much as any other place in the world, there will always be some. So, this is the reason why you must be careful if you ever decide to come and visit us. I am not comfortable with revealing either my real name or the exact location of the park, but I promise I'll do my best to give you as many details as possible about the strange events that happen here. You see, our park is a very regular place, in fact. Our staff members and the visitors are not the only ones roaming here. For that reason, we also provide group tours to increase the safety level, because sometimes the rules are not enough. You know, some people just won't listen. They'll laugh about it, think of it as a joke, and then get in trouble. Only problem is that in most cases we find them when it's way too late to give a hand. I'll start from our very first rule. 1. Avoid the dogs. If they come at you, do not pet them and continue walking. Just ignore them. They can't touch you if you don't touch them first. Seems weird, right? What dogs are you even talking about, you may ask. Now, you must know that we don't allow any pets into the park to keep it clean, and this should act as a warning already. This, in fact, means they are not real dogs. My first encounter with one of them was unpleasant. I was still a newbie, so I wasn't alone, luckily enough. Otherwise, I don't think I'd still be here to tell you my stories. Me and my colleague, we'll call him Tom, were patrolling through an area that wasn't much popular among the visitors, probably because there is always a nasty smell in the air, like of rotting eggs. When I asked Tom, that had much more experience than me about it, he said they tried many times searching for the source without finding anything really concrete. We were walking down a pretty narrow path when all of a sudden a dog came out of the bushes. It looked kind of old, and the fur was dark as coal and covered with dirt. Then, it started approaching us, wagging the tail. I tried moving towards it because I thought it was lost, but I felt an arm blocking me, and when I noticed, I turned my face to the left. I realized it was Tom, a scared expression plastered on his face. "Don't move. Don't touch him." I was confused. I looked at the dog again, and then it looked back at me. I felt my heart jump. There was something unnatural in the eyes, something that I can't quite come to explain. I can only say that at that moment, something felt extremely wrong with it. Yet, the thing that looked like a dog didn't come too near us, and simply stood there, wagging its tail and looking at us, waiting. Then, I understood why Tom told me not to touch it. The thing couldn't touch us unless we touched it first. I stepped back, and so did Tom. A few seconds passed, but it seemed like we had been standing there for minutes. The dog then growled and disappeared into the bushes, leaving me and Tom finally alone. This was my first encounter with one of these quote-unquote dogs, but not the last. I've met them many times, and yet I've never managed to understand what they truly are. What I know, however, is that you must never touch them. How is it possible that our staff is aware about this? The following story was told to us.
All right. Another great story by our man Swamp Dweller here on Spaced Out Radio. So thank you so much, Mr. Swamp. Make sure you go over to his YouTube channel, Swamp Dweller, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. We really do appreciate that, my friend. We'll get to another one tomorrow night. Now, we got a beautiful guest for you tonight. As, you know, Stacy Horn, she is someone who has the ability to really transcend a lot of different topics as an author. She's a researcher. She has written 6 nonfiction books, including books like Damnation Island, Poor, Sick, and Mad Criminal in the 19th Century New York. She's also stepped into the paranormal at times with other great books like The Restless Sleep. Unbelievable investigations into ghosts, poltergeist, telepathy, and other unseen phenomena from the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory. And first off, in the first part of the show, we are going to be talking to her about New York City's cold cases, the Restless Sleep, inside New York City's cold case squad. I mean, this is just some great true crime that we have going on. Stacy Horn, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. Thanks for inviting me to be on the show.
Well, it's going to be absolutely great here because very rarely do we see an author on this show who has a multitude of different topics that you have covered over the years. I mean, usually you get an author and they're so focused on that genre that they're getting it. You've kind of bounced all over the place. You know, I respect that.
I think that's actually the best part of getting to write books is you can just pick a topic that's interesting to you and then you get to research it for a long time and write about it and immerse yourself into it. Why would I want to do the same subject again and again?
I can attest to that. You know, it's kind of like this show every night. You know, I mean, you can only do so many UFO shows before you're like, hey, I need some true crime. I need a paranormal fix. I need to talk about near-death experiences, OBEs, or even Dogman or Bigfoot. So I do understand that. But, you know, for you, I mean, is it all about your imagination or is it about your love of research of weird stories and true stories that are out there?
Well, I'd like to say it's my imagination, but it has little to do with my imagination. I mean, the subjects that I read, my books are nonfiction. So when it comes to a book like the Parapsychology Laboratory, I mean, I guess to some degree it's a function of what you believe or don't believe. But well, when we talk about this, I'll go more into it. But the men and women at the Parapsychology Laboratory were scientists, so the experiments and the research that they did is solid.
Interesting, very interesting. As you kind of go through that, so for you, I'm very curious. how did you become a writer? Is this something that you wanted to strive for as a young child, or was this something you kind of fell into because your curiosity got the best of you with a lot of these interesting subjects?
I actually made up my mind to be a writer when I was 9 years old. And then for some reason, I didn't pursue it for a long time. I had a whole lifetime of a career doing other things. And I wrote my first book, well, I believe I was in my 30s. And the book that we're going to talk about tonight was my second book. And it was my first real serious book. And it's funny, like you were saying, I jump around in subjects. And the other side to the fun part about getting to write about a bunch of different subjects is I always begin each book absolutely terrified because I don't know anything about what I'm about to write about. And I will never forget, for this particular book, The Restless Sleep, the first meeting that I had, I went in to meet with the commanding officer of the cold case squad and his second in command. And I just didn't know anything about police, true crime, cold cases, nothing. And I just remember walking in there just babbling and trying to convince them that I'm the person to write this book who knows nothing. And them just looking at me, I thought that they thought I was an idiot, but apparently I made a good impression and I got to write the book.
So for you, getting that break, there's a lot of authors out there who really struggle in making a living off of this. We know quite a number of authors who come on this show on a weekly and monthly basis, and some of them are doing it for the love of writing, and others are doing it for a career. How have you been able to etch a career in such a tough field?
Well, for a long time, I was able to do nothing but write books, but the publishing industry, it's getting harder and harder. And now I do have a day job. I still write books, but it's not the only thing I do to make money.
Well, everybody has to have that secondary career because, if you're like me, you like to eat. You like to have a roof over your head, maybe gas in your tank every now and again if you're driving. But I know you're in New York, so maybe you take the subway. I don't know.
Subway.
I've never been to New York. One of my goals is to actually ride that subway one day. I just want to say that. I just want to say I've done it. Try the human roller coaster right there. That'll be worth the money. That is for sure. For sure. So here you get this opportunity to write a true crime book, and you've never really done it before. You must have been nervous.
I was nervous, but I had a few things on my side. I mean, I first heard about the cold case squad. It was right after 9/11, and I was with a friend delivering cupcakes to the police and firefighters working to rescue. Well, they believed that they were going to be rescuing people. And one of the people that I met that night was a detective from the cold case squad. And I didn't even know what the cold case squad was. And for your listeners who may not also know, the cold case squad goes back through old unsolved homicides to see if there are any that they can solve. So he was telling me about their work, which got my attention because I've always been interested in, for whatever reason, morbid stories, but particularly morbid stories that have been forgotten. So the idea that there were all these homicide victims, whose cases were never solved and that they've been piling up for years, forgotten, that attracted me. But then he also told me that there were warehouses all around Manhattan where they stored evidence from these crimes. There's no statute of limitations for murder, so they have to maintain all this evidence. And so I just envisioned warehouses with evidence from murders going back 100 years, the history of New York City. And I had to get inside these warehouses. I had to see what was in there.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I mean, this is where curiosity could really, kill a cat here. No pun intended, of course, because I know you're a cat owner and a cat lover, and so am I, right? And so many of our audience as well. But, I mean, this story going over the last century of cold case files, missing people, murders that are unknown, and so on and so forth. I mean, where do you even start on something like that?
Well, where did I start? Well, the first thing I learned, which was almost every day I learned something that shocked and surprised me. And one of the first things I learned was the shocking number of how many murders do go unsolved. I had the impression that most murders are solved. Like, I knew not all of them would be solved, but I still thought most were solved. And I learned that anywhere from 30 to 50% of the murders that happen a year never get solved. And so the NYPD, starting in 1985, started putting all the homicide cases in a database. So I started researching my book around 2001. So I was looking at the murders from 1985 to 2001. And at that time, there were 9,000 unsolved homicides in New York from that period alone. So what I decided first to do was to become an expert on which murders go unsolved. And I wanted to get an idea of the history of unsolved murders. So I looked at 100 years of unsolved murders in New York, again, just to get a sense of whose cases go cold, whose murders aren't solved. And from there, I had to narrow it down to a handful of cases that I thought would represent all of them. So I picked one unsolved case involving a child, just because those are the cases that they always work the hardest. I mean, a child being murdered just naturally, I think, grabs everybody more than any other possible murder victim. Then I wanted to pick a case with going in the opposite direction, the least sympathetic victim. So I picked a case of 2 drug dealers that were murdered. I picked a mob case. And then I wanted to pick a very, very old case. And I found a case of a young woman who was murdered in Brooklyn in 1951. And those are the ones that I researched and wrote about.
How many missing people, murders, or unsolved cases were there in New York the last century? I mean, if I think about it, I'm thinking, 3,000? Maybe up to 10,000?
Well, as I said, there were 9,000 unsolved homicides going back to 1985. That number is now around 11,000. Missing people, I can't tell you, because missing people I didn't write about. That's a separate department. Missing persons is a whole nother division. I will say, though, that I did visit that division and talk to the commanding officer, just because, I mean, you're right to kind of want to put them together, because missing persons in many cases are not missing persons. They're people that were murdered and the bodies just haven't been found. But they are researched by a different group and a different set of detectives. But I did have one story to tell about the missing persons department. There was a missing persons case from the 1970s of a young boy in New York called Eton Pates that, for whatever reason, his case kind of caught everyone's imagination. It became a national story, but it was a big, big case here in New York. A 6-year-old boy left to go to school and then never returned, and he was never found. And his case was in all the papers for a long time. And so I went to the missing persons department, and I was used to, whenever I started looking at the case files for an unsolved homicide, I could tell if it was a big case by how many boxes of files were involved in that case. Like, some murder cases were only one small manila folder full of papers.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there, Stacy, because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour here. StacyHorn.com is her website. You can find all of her books there, including The Restless Sleep, Inside New York City's Cold Case Squad. We continue with Spaced Out Radio right after this. All right, we're clear. There we go. Quick first half hour right there. Warmed up, stretched, ready to get into the deep stuff when we come back. So it's a little bit different than probably what you're used to, but, you know, I'll blame the Canadian accent on that. That's right, Mike L. Going to be a fast night tonight. Going to need a part 2. Probably already. You guys just wait until we get into her study of Duke University's parapsychology department. Holy cow. This is crazy. Crazy talk. Yeah.
I feel like your listeners might be more into that.
Oh, they're into everything. They're into everything. I punish them with so much UFO talk that you are a breath of fresh air.
The Duke research was fun, though. That was a lot of fun for me.
All right. Cosmic Floor would like to know, what is your thoughts of eating breakfast foods for dinner?
My thoughts on that?
Yes. This is a serious question here.
Yeah, what's wrong with French toast, pancakes for dinner? I'll do it.
This might be a short show, people. Might be a short show. All right. Now, take you back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. All right? Remember Steven Spielberg's movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yes.
Okay. Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Are you on thinking it's a stump or a rock?
Is this a question that people is there a ongoing debate about this?
Every night it happens here.
Well, I don't know, actually, but if I had to guess, rock.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that just throws my theories right out in the garbage. Right there.
I don't know, though. I haven't been out there. I'm not a geologist, so.
Okay. Well, we'll let it slide for this one. We'll let it slide. See?
I love that movie.
See, here's another question right here. Ask if she eats breakfast for dinner. See, people want to know this stuff because apparently I'm the weirdo. All right. Thomas Fessler, great show earlier before ours, by the way. And all our listeners, if you're looking for a great warm-up to Spaced Out Radio, Thomas Fessler's Disclosure Tonight on YouTube has just a fantastic show. Fantastic show. You need to check him on out. Hit that subscribe button there. Thank you so much, Thomas, for the Super Chat, along with Todd Purdon as well. The Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Alien Critter, how you doing, man? Good to see you back. Who else has joined us here late? Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, nice to see you, buddy. And sorry I couldn't make it earlier, man. Sovereign, how you doing, man? Nice to have you back as well. So, there we go. Oh, there's our buddy Merle. Merle it up, people. Merle it up. He likes to drink Merlot. Yes. The Merly bird gets the worm. You know where I'm going with this. Hi, Ann B. How are you? And Stacy's like, what the hell did I get myself into here? Hi.
No, I'm not into that.
We're all about having some fun here. All right. There goes our audience now. Merling it up. And, yes, hello to, who else is joining? The lovely and talented Amy Vegas O. Don't forget, we're going to be putting out some plans very soon about our Vegas party for Spaced Out Radio, April 22nd to 24th And we want to make sure all of our listeners who want to attend can attend. There is no cover. There is no fees. You just got to get there, man. And we're going to all hang out and talk some spooky stories and just have a weekend of good, high-quality woo in the Nevada desert. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to try and drag Merle out there, too. Hey, my brother Eugene, how you doing? Remember, mark that date, April 22nd to 24th. We want to see a bunch of you guys there. All right? So check it on out. Let's see here. Stunning Purpose and Grace, good to see you. And we got about 20 seconds here before we're going to go on. Then I'll reintroduce you, and then here we go. All in a good night. And 10 seconds. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you, if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading up on Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Author Stacy Horn is here. We're talking about cold case files out of New York. Thousands of them. And she only had to pick a few to write an incredible book on. And the book is called The Restless Sleep, Inside New York City's Cold Case Squad. And you can find it on Amazon as well as major bookstores. Stacy, welcome back.
Great to still be here.
All right. How did you come across the cases that you wanted to cover with so many to choose from? What were you looking for?
I honestly didn't know what I was looking for. It was finding 4 needles in a very, very, very large haystack. The only one that I instantly gravitated towards was I was in one precinct and I found a box of case files, and no one had opened that box in like 30 years. So I just knew I had to pick something from that box, and that was the 1951 case I wrote about, Jean Sanseverino, a young girl who came to New York from Alabama and was murdered. The other cases, it was more, I would talk to the detectives and ask them, what they were working on, what cases were memorable to them, and after hearing them talk about the cases, I would choose from that. I felt the story when I heard them, and when I heard their passion and heard them talk about what they had to do to solve the case. And that's what drew me into the cases. I guess I would say I almost picked the detectives before the case.
The stories you must have heard from the detectives. I mean, we always think of police officers, especially detectives looking into these types of cases, as rigid, as cold. We don't see them really putting their own personal emotions in the way of everything. I mean, how personal were they taking a lot of these cases? Did they feel like they were failing not only the family but the public at large?
I would say they do take it very personally. They get very close with the families, the families of the murderers as well as the families of the victims. They get close to their informants on the case. They get very protective of everyone involved. With one of the cases that I wrote about, a particularly horrible case. This was a young married couple. These were the two drug dealers that were, well, actually, only one of them we know for a fact was a drug dealer. We don't know that the wife was involved with selling drugs. But they were murdered. They had 3 young children at the time. I'm not sure I'm going to remember their exact ages, but they were in the area of 2, 3, and 4 years old. It might have been 2, 4, and 6, but they were very, very young children. And the murder was planned, and the murderers brought their girlfriends along to babysit the children. And so the girlfriends took the 3 children to another room, while the murderers had the couple in another room. They were there to get the drugs, to steal the drugs. And so what kills me about this case is the women that were babysitting the children had children of their own. And when their parents started to be murdered, they could hear everything. They could hear the screams. They could hear everything that was going on. So the children started crying and screaming. And these women are going, oh, it's going to be fine. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. And they were comforting the children, knowing very well that it wasn't going to be fine at all. And then when they were done, when they found the drugs, murdered the parents, they left. And they left the children there with the bodies of their parents. And one of them was old enough to call 911. And I listened to that 911 recording, and I almost have a panic attack just remembering it. But it was just this one little boy calling for help. And he was only 6. And the 911 operator is, she's all business, and she has to be. She's got to find out where they are. And so she's going, what is your address? And he's just crying. He's like, my mommy's dead, my daddy's dead. And she's trying to get him to focus and get his address. And it's just horrifying. And you hear the other children crying in the background. But anyway, so they've done this, and they leave the children. And what they do next is they get a nice hotel, and in the morning they use the money that they found. These women, I don't know why I get angrier at them. They didn't do the actual murder, but they took this money and bought presents for their children. And I just thought, you're essentially giving your own children presents that were bought by the murderers of others, and it's like you poisoned your children with these presents. And anyway, that's one of the stories I wrote about. Now nobody's going to want to read this. It's so horrifying.
You know what, though? I think when it comes to kids, though, we never want children to have to deal with adult problems. I mean, that's just horrific.
Isn't it?
I mean, wow. I just, that just pisses me off so bad.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, but on the flip side, when you have people in that type of lifestyle, certain things don't matter. The job has to get done.
Yeah. Crime. It's a very complicated subject. Weirdly, in the course of writing this book, well, actually, it was when I finished this book, I learned a lot about murder, and I was able to learn a lot about murder just because there's a lot of good records out there. Police departments voluntarily report all the murders in their area to the FBI. And the FBI puts out reports every year called the Uniform Crime Reports. They have another name for it. But anyway, I'm able to look and see how many murders are committed every year, any place in America. And I can learn a lot about, which ones were solved, who the victims were, who the perpetrators were. I mean, if you want to study and learn about murder, there's a lot of data out there. And just as my book was coming out, there was a very big white-collar crime that the trial had just ended, and the guy was convicted. I think it was Bernie Ebbers, but it was a big white-collar crime. And I thought, oh my God, that's interesting, because I had just spent 2 years researching murder, and I knew exactly, how much effort is put in by police departments to solve murders, and it's a lot. Like, they spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of manpower solving murder. And I just wondered, how many white-collar crimes, I knew how many murders are committed a year. I knew how many murders are solved a year. I thought, how many white-collar crimes are there? How many white-collar crimes are solved? And what are the losses? How much money, or what are the losses? And so I started looking into it, and I couldn't find out anything. I called up every place that I thought researches and tries to investigate white-collar crime. I called the FBI, I called the SEC, I called the Attorney General, I called everyone I could think of, and I said, how many white-collar crimes are you investigating? How many white-collar criminals are there? How many white-collar trials are there every year? How many white-collar crimes? They said, we don't know, because we're not keeping track. And everyone I talked to, from the FBI to the SEC, and this was in 2003 or 4, they said, nobody's keeping track of that. And so I said, you can't even tell me how many, white-collar crimes your own office is investigating? And they said, no. And it wasn't like they didn't want to tell me, because telling me, the very fact of them telling me that they didn't know was certainly more embarrassing than anything else they could have volunteered. So it was the beginning of something in my mind that we put all this effort into investigating and solving street crimes and putting those people in jail, and we do not do the same with white-collar criminals. Now, there's no denying that there are victims, and the fact that street crimes, especially murder, are destructive, terrible crimes. But even murder, and I know I'm going to sound terrible for saying this, but if someone murders someone, so that person is affected and their family is affected, but it's a relatively contained, terrible crime. But when someone, like if you look at the opioid crisis, when they put out a drug that they know is as addictive as it is, and then says it's not addictive, and then causes all these deaths, that is a much more widely destructive crime, and yet we don't call that murder, and nobody that is involved in that crime has gone to jail yet that I know of. So now writing that book about murder sent me into another direction with criminal justice.
How hard is it?
Sorry.
No, I think that's great, because, seeing your own emotion in it leads to my next question, which is, how hard is it for you to separate the writer from the person when you're having to deal with the uglier side of humanity?
It's hard, depending on the situation. With the Restless Sleep, I enjoyed very much getting to know the detectives, though. The detectives that I wrote about were fine with me. The NYPD as a whole is a very conservative group. I'm a very liberal, politically minded person, so they had mixed feelings about me. But they were all happy with the book in the end. I was very fair, and I kept my own politics out of the book and just talked about what they do. But other things I couldn't handle as well. In the end, I decided not to talk to any murderers, because the little contact that I did have with them in the beginning, they were so repulsive to me, I just didn't want to spend any time with them. So I decided I don't want their attention, they don't deserve my attention, and I'm going to focus on the detectives and what they do, and what I did in the book was I would describe the murder very, very briefly, and then that was it. All the rest of the book is about the investigation.
What caught you off guard about the way the investigations are done in these cold case files?
Well, when I've got a cat. I don't know if you can see him.
That is fine. There's a beautiful cat. Beautiful cat.
A lot of things surprised me. Like I had this sense that most cases were going to be solved or had been solved by DNA, and it turned out only a tiny, tiny percentage. Like at the time that I wrote my book, only 2% of the cases that they solved were solved using DNA. And what I didn't realize at the time, it's less true now, but I was writing this book after 9/11, so my research started in 2002. And what I didn't realize was how new using DNA forensically was. Like the test to do it had only been introduced like sometime in the late 80s. The NYPD didn't even have a lab to do DNA analysis until 1992. And the FBI only started collecting profiles in the 90s, and the database that everybody's familiar with, CODIS, where they on TV when they're always uploading DNA profiles, it's to CODIS. That didn't become operational until 1998. So at the time when I was writing my book, that database had only been around for 4 years. So the biggest problem is they didn't have very many profiles. They'd only been collecting them for so long. So when somebody uploaded a profile and it didn't have a match, it wasn't a big surprise because there weren't many profiles to match them to. So what I did learn was good detectives just every year would just keep rerunning these profiles. Just as more and more profiles were entered, the chances of getting a hit later on would go up. So that was a big surprise to me that DNA was not used very much. Also, just the whole politics of the NYPD was a shock to me. Like the cold case squad itself, like having a cold case unit, having a bunch of detectives go back and trying to solve unsolved murders. Sounds like a great idea, right? Well, the NYPD fought it tooth and nail. They didn't want a cold case squad. Everyone was against it. And the main reason was all these people that were unable to solve the crimes, the murders, they thought, well, if these guys solve the crime, they're going to show me up and they're going to make me look bad. Which is a very, I guess, human and understandable response, but the more important thing is solving the cases. So it was a big political battle to get that cold case squad off, established. And it wasn't established until, I think it was 1996. Then once it was established, when the detectives would go to the precincts and asked to look at the cases, that was another thing. So the best detectives were the detectives with the best people skills, the one who could walk in and talk those guys out of, handing over the files. And so they would be very diplomatic. It's like, I've got some time. You've got like a lot of cases, just let me take a look. And you have to remember in 1996, oh my God, I think I have it. I just want to, one of the things that they would use to get people to hand over the cases, like, okay, 1996. Okay, there were just under 1,000 murders in New York in 1996. So they'd say, you've got a lot of cases you're looking at. Let me look at some of these older cases and see if I can do anything. So, and that's another thing. Like, here you've got a squad that everybody in the NYPD is against. You've got the detectives and all the other squads want you to fail. Like, what kind of detective is going to sign up for that? Sure, and the cases that they're going to look at are, by their very definition, the hardest cases. Like, Other detectives tried to solve these cases. They couldn't. So you're taking the hardest cases under a situation where people want you to fail. Like, who's going to sign up for that?
Nobody.
No. About 50 detectives did.
Really?
Yeah.
That surprises me. Normally I don't take questions until hour 2, as we got about 4 minutes to go here before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Author Stacy Horn is our guest tonight. But Larry has a good question here. Did you ever look into any cases or see any cases that were solved by psychics?
No. And I have a very good story that I tell about psychics in Unbelievable. Psychics who helped in a missing persons case. And I would love to tell that story because it kind of answers the question. But there was one detective in the cold case squad who used psychics. But the problem was, and this was something that I learned more about when I wrote Unbelievable, it's not that psychics do or don't have the ability to gather information in ways that cannot be explained. But the legitimate ones who are honest about it cannot summon it on demand. Like, it can't be like, okay, let me think really hard and something's going to come to me. They have no control about when the information comes and what information comes. And there's no way of verifying if it's true, even if it is, some real fact. So the few times that they use psychics that I was able to learn anything about what the information they provided, it was always too general to be useful. But that was only again, in a small window of time that I was looking, doing research. I can't say that psychics never helped the NYPD in the case. I don't know.
2 minutes to go here. Nicole is wondering if you ever came across in your research any cover-ups on cases.
Cover-up? No. The only thing I can say along those lines is the NYPD is like any other organization. Like, if you walk into any place of business, there's going to be people who are really good at their job, people that are, okay, they're doing enough to get by, and then people who are just really terrible at it. So it's true at the NYPD, there's good detectives, average detectives, and terrible detectives. So it could be that a case is not solved because it didn't get assigned to a good detective. I probably shouldn't be saying these things, but active cover-ups, not that I came across. And I'm trying to think of a reason they would have. The only reason I could think they would have to cover up is if they did it, or if they had a friend who committed the crime do it. But not that I came across, no.
Well, I guess that's a good thing because, it's always wondering about whether or not there are dirty police officers out there who are covering up crimes for other officers or whatever else they may be into, and using their position of authority as somewhat of a scam, so to speak. But I mean, if you didn't, go ahead.
I was only researching and writing about murder, so that's all I know about. I will say one of the things I did learn, I had a printout of all the unsolved murders going back to 1985, and it's this big fat printout, and I studied that. Oh, I just looked at those pages over and over and over, just looking for patterns. And one of the things I did discover was if you were black or Asian and you were murdered, your case was 4 times as likely to go cold than if you were white.
That's interesting.
So there has to be an explanation for that.
Very interesting indeed. We're going to go to break here at the top of the hour, and we're going to shift gears here with our guest tonight, author Stacy Horn. Her website, stacyhorn.com, if you want to check out all of her books. We're going to get into a real cool book that she wrote about the Duke University Parapsychology Laboratory. Did you even know there was one out there? I'd heard about it, I didn't know it actually existed. Ghosts, poltergeists, telepathy, other unseen phenomena. Let's check it on out as we enter hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio. Stacy Horn continues with us on the mighty SOR right after this. All right, we're clear. Yes, I buried my beard outside next to a tree. Sorry. Go ahead.
Who are you talking to? Oh, I see.
I had a big bushy beard a couple weeks ago.
Oh. Now I see this, one of your chat people mentioned cover up on mob hits. I do have something to say about that. If we have time.
We can do that. Or if you want to answer that right now, we do have some time, and if you don't want to take a break.
Can they hear me?
They can totally hear you.
The people who are in chat?
Yes.
Okay, about the mob. I did have one mob case, and it was so complicated because it was a RICO case. I don't know if they know about RICO, but it's when you're talking about organized crime, and so instead of researching one crime, you're putting together an array of crimes. And the case was so complicated, and there were so many murder victims that I had to have like all these timelines to follow what was going on. But I had this idea of the mob being from the Godfather movies, very competent, sophisticated, very cunning, smart criminals. Whereas the mob, in reality, at least in the time period that I was writing about it, was not at all like that. It was closer to The Sopranos. It was just a bunch of. They put a hit out on this one guy, and this old man got murdered, and the police were like flummoxed because they didn't know why did the mob murder this old man, and it turned out they were supposed to murder his son. And they murdered the father instead by accident. And it was always like this, these just weird guys. So cover up on mob hits. Like, why would the police cover up mob hits? I'm not sure about that question.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Oh, and I was threatened by the mob because of what I wrote. I wrote about this one guy. He came to one of the commanding officers taught at John Jay College, and he invited this mobster in to talk about the mob. And this guy presented himself like he was Tony Soprano, but he was really just a sad guy, very, very low on the mob totem pole. And he just sounded like he had this really terrible life. So he's going like, I know you all think I'm like Tony Soprano. And I was thinking, nobody thinks you're like Tony Soprano, and we feel bad for you. and I put that in the book, and the mother like emails me like, how dare you talk to my son about like that? And I said, I was actually trying to be compassionate. What did I get wrong about him? And the wife wrote me too, and everyone was threatening me. And I asked the detective, should I be concerned that they're threatening me? And he's gone, no, they don't. It's an old woman. She's just, don't worry about it. And it never did turn out to be a problem.
Well, that's good. That's good. All right. We've got about 2.5 minutes to go here before we got to come back to the show. The mob thing scares me.
Which mob thing?
Everything to do with the mob. It's just freaky. Freaky lifestyle.
But all these things that we thought were true about the mob, it just turned out to be not true. Like all these do's and don'ts, like neighborhoods where the mob are supposed to be the safest because the mob makes sure, that nobody's committing crimes except them, and that's not true. That they won't hurt women. They do. This whole mob code just turns out not to be true.
Weird. Totally odd. Quickly here, I want to remind people that Lynn Wallington has a new start time on the weekends from 6 p.m. Pacific to 8 p.m. Pacific. That's 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and then followed by After Hours with Big Willie, Gemma Jade, and the fedora-wearing John Hudson on Saturdays and Sundays following Lynn. We had a great turnout last week. We hope that you all turn out again for both shows. That's 5 hours of entertainment for you right here on our Spaced Out Radio YouTube channel. We really do appreciate the love and support. I want to say a big thank you to both Thomas and Todd for the super chats tonight. It's a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis here with Spaced Out Radio. So thank you so much for the love. We really appreciate it. Big thank you to all the veterans who are listening into our show tonight. We love you. You always have a safe home in our chat rooms, wherever you are, whether it's in our YouTube chat, on Revolution Radio, wherever you may be. Always a good time with the veterans here. And all our regulars, great to have you here. Don't forget, you can go to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and get some really cool swag. And Kira, we put up some tank tops for you. You wanted tank tops. I thought of you. Put some tank tops up there for you. All right, we're going to get going here with Hour 2 in about 3 seconds. So get ready, people. Here we go.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for tuning us in tonight. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Balustraria. Balustraria is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with author Stacy Horn, shifting gears a little bit here. As the first hour, we talked about cold cases in New York City that she wrote a book on that you can check out on Amazon or her website, stacyhorn.com. We're going to go into a different direction here because she is an author of many genres. This one, paranormal. Yes, her book, Unbelievable, Investigations into Ghosts, Poltergeist, Telepathy, and Other Unseen Phenomena from the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory. Stacy, welcome back.
Great to still be here.
Wonderful. We're glad you're here, too. Have you always had an interest in the paranormal?
I have always loved a good ghost story, yes.
Do you remember the first one? Have you ever experienced anything?
I did. Though I didn't know, I was a very young child, so I didn't identify it as a ghost story at the time. But when I was very little, I used to just wander off and get lost all the time. And one time I wandered off, and I didn't know where I was, but there was an old woman in the front yard, and she had cats, and I asked her if I could come in and play with her cats, and she said yes. She invited me inside, gave me milk and cookies, let me play with her cats, and I described where I lived, and she got me home. And I got into a lot of trouble for wandering off yet again. But a year later, I remembered her, and I wanted to go visit her, and I remembered where she lived, and I wanted to visit her cat. So I went back to her house, and when I got there, the house was like the roof had caved in, the lawn was overgrown. I mean, it was obvious, even to me as a child, that nobody had lived in that house for a very, very, very long time. So I was standing in front of the house, I didn't know what to make of it. Like, I'm looking at it going, okay, nobody's lived here for years, and I was here last year, so I didn't know how to explain it to myself. And a woman next door saw, this little girl standing in front of the house, and she said, "Are you okay? Are you in trouble? Are you hurt? Can I help you?" And I said, "Where is the lady who used to live here?" And she said, "Why?" And I said, "I wanted to visit her. I met her last year." And she looked at me and she said, "You could not have met that lady. She hasn't lived here for a long time." And as she said that, I knew it was true. But again, I didn't know how to explain it to myself. And I said, "Oh, okay, I must have the wrong house. Thank you." And she went off, and I went into the house, and I heard a voice say to me, "Look in the bedroom." And I actually didn't know where the bedroom was, but it was a very tiny house. There's only so many places it could be. I walk into a room. Oh, and the table that I had sat in was there, but it was like the ceiling had come in on it, and there was like dirt and wood. And I went into the bedroom, and there was a carton there. And inside the carton were 4 baby kittens. And so I picked up the box of kittens and took them home and asked my mother if we could keep them. And she said yes. And the way I explained it to myself was the little old lady from wherever she was wanted me to have those kittens. And she's the one who said, "Go into the bedroom." And so...
Wow.
My mother, she's no longer alive, but she could have verified that, yes, I brought a box of kittens home that day.
Well, we know you have a love for cats, so that makes sense. But I mean, so many ghost stories right off the bat are usually pretty eerie and that of nightmares. Yet here's yours leading this old lady whose voice you had heard, leading you to protect these little kittens. I mean, that was almost prophetic.
And again, like I certainly knew what ghosts were, but I didn't think to myself, a ghost is speaking to me. When I realized that I could not have met that lady that I met, I didn't say to myself, "Oh, I must have talked to a ghost." I mean, I didn't know how to explain it.
All right, well, let's shift into writing a book about the paranormal. How did you first learn about Duke University's parapsychology department?
Well, I'm like you. I always heard about the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory. Like, I didn't know anything about it, but I'd heard Duke Parapsychology Lab off and on over the years. And I had actually proposed writing a book about a ghost story in Manhattan from the 1960s. And a publisher said, "Well, this is a good ghost story, but I grew up not far from the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory, and I always wondered what went on in there. How about writing a book about that?" And I thought, oh my God, that's a great idea. I mean, there must be a lot of great stories in that lab. So I said, sure. And the Duke lab closed in the 1960s, but it continued outside the lab, and it still exists, and it's still in Durham, North Carolina. So I called up the lab, asked, if they would be willing to talk to me. They said absolutely, and they told me that Duke University possesses all the records from the parapsychology laboratory when they had it. So I contacted Duke University and arranged to go down there, and I spent a few months going through the archives from the labs, and it was incredible. I could have spent years going through that stuff. Essentially what it is, like at the time, the lab started in the 1930s, so they operated for 30 years, from the 30s to the 60s. And for that period of time, they were very well known. So whenever anything weird or unexplained happened in America, they would contact the lab. And because this was the 30s to the 60s, they didn't call the lab, they wrote the lab. So they would write a letter describing what would happen. So right now at Duke University basically is the most perfect record of every strange thing that happened in America in this period of time. And so my favorite thing when I was doing the research was going through these letters, and I just found so many good stories. It's just a treasure trove there. But one of the stories that I want to tell about the missing persons thing, but one of my favorite stories I found was I was going through the letters, and I found this letter from 1949, I believe, from a priest. And he's describing a disturbance that was happening in a family in that parish. And I'm reading the letter, and I said, and I'm thinking, it sounds exactly like The Exorcist. The priest is saying, except it was a boy, not a girl. And he's saying, whenever he gets into the bed moves, the projectile vomiting, the words appearing on his skin. I mean, everything was like The Exorcist. Now, at the time when I was doing my research, I had read the book, The Exorcist. I had seen the movie. And I did not know that it was based on a real story. And probably everybody, I'm the last to know, but I didn't know. And I looked into it, and William Peter Blatty, who wrote the book, Friedkin. Wait, did I get that backwards? Did I just say the director or the writer? Or the guy who wrote the book was in graduate school at the time, and there was a case involving a poltergeist in Maryland that was in all the papers at the time. So The Exorcist is based on that real case involving a boy in Maryland. And so what I had come across in the archives was a letter from the original priest who reached out to the Duke Parapsychology Lab about this case. But what was fascinating, one of many fascinating things that I learned reading these letters, was this original priest did not think it was possession. There was nothing in it like to suggest demons or Satan was behind what was happening to this boy. And the only way he could explain it was that it was a poltergeist. And that's why he was writing the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory, because he thought, well, they have experience in this area and maybe they can help in this situation. And they said, sure. But by that time, the family had kind of had it with scientists because they had taken him to hospitals and all sorts of places and nobody could help them. And so by that time, 2 Catholic priests had approached the family saying, we can help, we'll perform an exorcism. And so they said, okay, we're going with the priest. Like they'd had it with research, they just wanted relief. So they said no thank you to the Duke lab, and they went with the priest instead. But the correspondence between the priest and the head of the lab, a man named J.B. Rhine, continued, and that was fascinating. And one of the things that Rhine asked the priest was, did you ever witness any of these things, occurrences yourself, or are you just telling me what the family told you? And he said, well, as a matter of fact, the family asked if one night the boy could stay at my house just to give him a break from these things happening to him. And so he said, sure. But the same exact things happened when he was staying in the home of the priest. The bed there too started to shake as well. So the priest set the boy up in like this low to the floor easy chair so he could sleep in that instead. And in the letter, he describes putting the boy in the chair, and then the next thing that happened was the boy and the chair started slowly moving back to the wall, and then it slowly tipped over. And so Ryan writes back and goes, "So you mean to say this boy is like in this chair moving and you just stood there watching, like you didn't try to help him?" And I was like sympathetic with the priest. Like the priest like writes back trying to explain himself, and he's going, "Well, yeah, I mean, it was happening really, really slowly. He didn't seem in any danger, and I was just kind of transfixed. I wanted to see what was going to happen."
Freaky.
Yeah.
Absolutely freaky. So when you started looking into the Duke University Parapsychology Laboratory, I mean, what were you expecting? Were you expecting just a bunch of ghost stories, or did you know that they were dealing with items such as telepathy or UFOs or cryptid sightings or anything along those lines that seem very science fiction?
Well, I didn't have any expectations. I had like zero clue what I was going to find. I remember, though, when I first got there, I was initially like, well, what happened was I went through the finding aid of the collection, and I selected about 10 boxes to look at first. And when I got there, I was so excited to open these boxes. And when I opened them up, it was like all math. I mean, pages and pages of statistics. And I don't have a background in statistics. I had no idea what it meant. And what I learned was, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, but when Ryan started this lab, they basically were brought to Duke to start this lab to see if they could use science to find evidence of life after death. Do we have to stop?
No, go right ahead.
So they started, that was their mission, see if they can use science to find evidence of life after death. So they started, their very first research was with a medium. And they did tests that I won't go into just to see if the information that she got, that she told them, was correct. And they found over and over and over again that she was able to provide information that she had no way of knowing. And so they thought about that, and they said, okay, all right, this is very interesting, and we want to research this, but there's nothing that tells us that she's getting this information, for instance, from dead people. In and of itself, this is not proof of life after death. But what it is proof of is that there is a way of getting information in the world that is independent of the physical body and independent of the known senses. So if there is something about us that operates independently of the body, that means when the body dies, there's something of us that could possibly continue. I mean, it's a place to start, basically. So we need to study this ability. We need to focus on this. The thing that they eventually called extrasensory perception or telepathy, ESP. And the first initial tests that they did was they took just a normal deck of playing cards, and they tried to see if people could tell them what playing cards they were holding without the person seeing the card. And they found that people could, but they also found that people had certain biases. They would just pick like certain cards, like the Ace of Spades or the King of Hearts. Like there was just too much familiarity and attention and attachment to a normal deck of cards. So they had another psychologist at the Duke Lab design an entirely different set of cards. And those are the ESP cards that were used in the movie Ghostbusters. They've got the star, the wavy lines. So they did tests. So it was a set of 25 cards, and they did thousands and thousands of trials and runs. And they found that, yes, people could tell them what symbols were on the cards that they couldn't see. And And as they went along, they would be criticized for how they conducted the tests. And so they kept refining the experiments to eliminate fraud, to eliminate any problem. And so they would they put a screen between the person giving the test and the person taking the test. Eventually, they separated them into different rooms, into different buildings, and eventually the experiments were conducted double blind. So the person giving the test didn't know what the symbols were on the cards either. And they found that people could still tell them to a degree that it was statistically significant, that they could tell them what symbols were on those cards. So some people have this ability to get information using a sense that we know nothing about. And that was actually the problem for the lab for their entire career. They found this very interesting ability, but they could learn nothing about it. They didn't know how it happened or anything about how it operated. So they couldn't strengthen it. So people couldn't get better at it. They couldn't control it. It was like a stalemate.
Yeah, I can totally see where that would be a stalemate. Now, when you started looking into a lot of these stories that were going on and a lot of the research, was there any topic in particular that really caught your attention?
Well, the missing persons thing. This caught my attention just because of my experience working with the NYPD. But sometime in the early 60s, a father in California reached out to J.B. Rhine. His 6-year-old son had gone missing on a camping trip. And he asked J.B. Rhine to please recommend psychics to help him find his son. And Rhine was reluctant, again, not because he didn't believe that psychics had an ability, but he just didn't think that psychics had an ability that would be useful to them. But the father kept writing, and Rhine was a father himself, so he just couldn't just blow the father off. So he gave him the names of two psychics, Peter Hurkos and Harold Sherman. And he said, you can try both of these men, but don't pay them any money beyond their expenses. He didn't want the father to get ripped off. And so the father reached out to Hurkos and to Sherman, and I wrote about this, and the records were still there at Duke. Peter Hurkos told the family that the boy had been picked up by an older married couple who never had children of their own, and he was on a farm in Oregon, I think he said. Yeah, Oregon. And they were taking good care of him. But he couldn't tell him anything more, but give him more money and he'll, be able to work hard on it. He was not a legitimate psychic. But Harold Sherman, and I just came to love Harold Sherman. I read these letters that he wrote to Rhine. He said, unfortunately, yes, I did get some information, and he said, but what I saw was the boy was murdered. And he goes, I don't want to say this to the parents, but he eventually did write the parents, and it's just heartbreaking. Like he said, look, okay, I'm going to tell you what I saw. And he definitely softened it. He said, but I want you to know that not all the images that I get are right. So I could be wrong about this. I'm just going to tell you what I saw. And then he said, then he wrote a really lovely thing. He said, I've had images of heaven. And he proceeded to tell the father, he said, if I'm right, and if your son sadly is dead, I want you to know about where he is. And he told them these lovely images that he had of him. So, but in the letters, he described the images that he got.
Wow.
Do you have to stop?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually cut you off right there. I apologize. We're gonna go to break here at the bottom of the hour. We are going to continue on talking about paranormal studies happening at Duke University. Author Stacy Horn has a book that can be found on her website, stacyhorn.com, as well as Amazon and any major bookstore, called Unbelievable: Investigations into Ghosts, Poltergeist, Telepathy, and Other Unseen Phenomena from the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory. We continue on with Spaced Out Radio with the second half of the show coming up right after this. All right, we're clear. These half hours go too quick.
I do want to get back to Harold Sherman because it's really good what I found out.
We will. We're going to pause on that, though, for right now because I don't want to give it up during the break here because our radio audience isn't going to be able to hear it. All right. Hello, Big J. How are you? Are you having fun, Stacy?
I am.
Good. Good.
I worried that I wouldn't remember enough.
Well, Mennonite Abe here says he's riveted by the story.
Oh, great.
Riveted.
It gets better.
He likes being riveted with rivets.
It gets better.
I'm looking forward to it. Alien Critter would like to know if you've ever seen a UFO.
Oh, no, I so want to. I so want to. Has he?
I believe so. Alien Critter, what's your UFO count at?
Oh, thank you, person Pinzer.
Pinzer. Brand new to our channel tonight, too. Brand new. Pinzer Flactum.
Oh, I have another great poltergeist story. It was actually the poltergeist that the movie The Poltergeist was based on.
Oh, wow. That's one of the only things I haven't had happen yet. And I say yet. It's poltergeist activity. Seen a lot of crap in there, but I've never had poltergeist activity. Felipe, thank you so much for the kind words, but it's not me. It is my team of Bree, along with Jennifer, and especially Dirty Filth and Spookles the Cat, who do the really incredible booking for this show. So do not give me credit for that, please. It is all on them. All on them. But I appreciate it. Thank you, Felipe. No, Mennonite Abe, you gotta wait for the poltergeist story. We'll bring that up. Do you follow the paranormal field quite a bit? See what's going on?
Whenever I write a book, I'm kind of hooked on that subject for the rest of my life. So I don't follow it to the same degree because I'm on to whatever the next thing I'm working on. But I always keep my ear out.
Very cool.
So I will always follow paranormal stories from now on. Same with unsolved murders.
Me too. I love the paranormal field.
Ever since writing the Duke book, I'm very protective. I'm particularly protective of those scientists and their work. When I was going through the letters, I would read these letters from scientists writing them. Just the rudeness is beyond belief. I always had this idea in my head that scientists were rational, but of course, I was just naive to think that. I mean,
yeah.
Of course they're human. They're human. They're going to be just like anyone else. And the letters that they wrote to these Duke scientists, who were very sincere, regardless of what you think, they were not tricksters or frauds. They were doing serious work, and they were just so rude to them. I felt bad. My favorite was this guy, though, Dr. Warren Weaver. He was at the time. He was the one that gave all the money out for research for Sloan Kettering. And he also was taken aback by how rude people were to them. So he went down to the Duke lab and went through all their research. And I just loved it. Like, not long after, he got up in this conference and said to all his peers, he goes, I'm just paraphrasing, and he goes, I find this field, the field of the paranormal, very painful because it's hard for me to accept. But I went down to the lab and I looked at their work, and you cannot discount what they did.
I'm going to get you to hold on right. I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We're gonna go right now. We've kicked off the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it. I want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with author Stacy Horn. StacyHorn.com is her website, and we're talking about this great book she has out called Unbelievable: Investigations into Ghosts, Poltergeists, Telepathy, and Other Unseen Phenomena from Duke Parapsychology Laboratory. This book can be found on Amazon, major bookstores. Stacy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it.
Okay, so can I finish the Harold Sherman story?
I would love the Harold Sherman story, yes.
So I left off, I was about to describe how Harold described the murder scene and the murder that this little boy, Bruce Kremen. And so I had this whole description, and I wrote it up, and I was going to put it in the chapter. And the last thing I wanted to do was to call the Missing Persons Division in California, just to find out where that case was left off. And because of my experience writing the cold case book and talking to the Missing Persons Division in New York, I knew that most likely they were going to tell me that nobody had touched the case in 40 years. Like, after a certain point, when it goes cold, there isn't anything else they can do unless new evidence appears. So I call up, I get the detective on the phone, and I explain who I am. And, I said, would you, I knew that, it's a pain in the ass for them to go find these cases that are 40 years old. And I said, would you please do me the favor and find this case and just let me know where it was left? And fortunately, the detective was very nice, and she said, sure, hold on. And so she goes off. I'm waiting on hold. She comes back, and she goes, the cold case squad has it. And I practically screamed in her ear, and she gave me the name of the detective. I called the detective. I said, will you talk to me? And she said, I can't talk to you now. I'll talk to you in a few months. And I said, can I send you the description that this guy gave of the possible murder? She said, sure, I'll take a look at it. And what was I going to say? I lost my track. Anyway, so I gave her the description, and I had to go to press essentially. So I had to finish the chapter without knowing what she was doing. But I have a blog, and so I very excitedly posted on it. Oh my God! There's a detective working on the Bruce Kremen case that I'm writing about because of these psychics. And then the next day, I get email from another writer. He said, well, as it happens, I'm writing a book about all these missing children that happened around the same time in the same place. And I had I found some evidence that they were all connected to this one guy who had already been known to have killed children in the area. And there was evidence connecting the boy I was researching and someone he was researching, and he found new evidence. He brought it to the cold case squad, and they had reopened the case, and they are investigating this one guy. And it wasn't until after my book was published that the detective looked at what Harold Sherman had described. And he said that what he saw was a man with dark complexion, wearing khaki pants and a red and black checkered shirt, had abducted Bruce Kremen. And people at the campsite had said that they saw Bruce Kremen walking away, holding the hand of a man with khaki pants and a red and black checkered shirt. And Harold Sherman certainly had no way of knowing this. And 40 years later, that information was buried in these detectives' files. And the description that he wrote of the murder scene, she said, I can't say for sure since we have not solved it, but what he said is plausible based on what we think. So it turns out what Harold saw, and he saw it way before this information had become available, was correct.
Wow. That is just chilling right there. Chilling. Yeah. Puts. Oh,
by the way, and there was a horrible case. Like there were all these children that went missing, and they believe it was this one guy, but they so far have not been able to prove it. But he did confess to some of the murders, so he was likely the person who murdered these other children.
Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting and chilling. Let's get into poltergeists here. We don't do a lot of poltergeist talk on this show. We probably should do more. But do you have any cases that you looked into regarding poltergeists?
Well, the New Parapsychology people were always looking for a poltergeist case to study because they thought that was going to tell them something about psychokinesis, the ability to move objects through senses that we don't know anything about. The problem was, unlike hauntings that can go on for years, poltergeist cases are usually very brief. And by the time they heard about them, they were long over. But the exception to that was this home on Long Island here in New York in 1958. And it was a family that were experiencing a bunch of disturbances, bottles, the tops would pop off, things would fall off counters, things would slide across the table and off the floor. And the first thing they did was call the police, which, by the way, when I read that, cracked me up, because the police, some of them have an open mind, but they're typically skeptical about everything. I mean, they're not, well, whatever. I don't have to say anymore. I could just see, like, the guy getting the call, like, so we have these things moving through the air. Can you come and help? And, like, yeah, sure, we'll come and help you. Yeah. But they did send a guy, and a detective was assigned to a case, Joe Tazzi, and he really, he did everything he could to solve the case. The case files luckily still exist. It was like a file this thick. And I read through, he called every possible expert. He called scientists. He called engineers. He called people at the airport to see if anything they were doing could have caused the movement in this family's house. He just did a wonderful job. And reading his files were hysterical, like, cause he was, just he was a cop. And so, instead of saying things, were flying through the air, he would say the object moved like 20 degrees southwesterly direction. And, it just very dry. It was very funny. So anyway, so somebody contacted the parapsychology lab and said, do you want to come down and investigate? And they said, absolutely. They sent one of their scientists, a man called Gaither Pratt, who went there, and the minute he got there, like, he knocked on the door, they opened the door, and something crashed in the basement. So things were just continually going on. And he ended up staying there, I forget how long, but he wrote a complete and thorough report of 67 events that had taken place. They were able to find logical explanations for all of them but 17 that could not be explained by any normal means. So they said this is a real and valid case. I tried to track down everyone in the family. I spoke to the wife of the detective. Was it the wife or the daughter of the detective? Now I can't remember. A relative of the detective, and she gave me a great story. Because I said, "What did your father think? I mean, did he believe in poltergeists? What did he think?" And she said, no, he didn't believe in any of that. She said, but he did tell me that one day he was there, investigating, and he always thought it was the boy, a young boy in the house. There was a young boy and a son and a daughter, and he thought it was the boy up to something. And he was there, and he had the boy right next to him, and they were about to go into the basement. And something hit him on the back of the legs, and it was a tiny statue of a horse, I believe. And there was nobody there who could have thrown the horse. She said that, he didn't know where to put that, but he had to say there was nobody there to throw the horse, and that horse was thrown at him. So they wrote up the report. I talked to the daughter, who is now a woman. I don't know how old she is, a middle-aged woman, and she grew up and she was a science teacher, I believe she said. And I said, did these things really happen? What do you think? And she said, yes, they definitely happened. She said, I don't believe in the paranormal, but things did fly off shelves, off tables, and all these things happened. She just believes that someday there'll be an explanation for it.
Don't you love that? I don't believe in the paranormal, but I got things flinging around my house, that can't be explained. That's funny. Well,
I know what they mean, and I'm kind of that way myself. I have an open mind. I just think we will be able to explain them, and the paranormal will be normal. It'll be a scientific thing, it'll be something that we now understand. I'm not sure this is coming out right, what I mean.
No, I understand. You know what? It's always good to have a skeptical mind. Just, when you do a show like this every night, like we do, kind of laugh at little things like that. Because so many people are afraid to believe what's going on in front of their own eyes as well. And that's
I talked to this guy at, oh God, see, I have the worst memory in the world. This is what I worried about. But I think he was at Princeton, and he also did research. Robert John, he did research in this area, and I liked what he said. He said, I think that there's, how there's different field theories, electromagnetic, gravitational, strong, weak. He said, I believe that we're eventually going to discover another field, another force that will be the explanation, like an information field that we can tap and learn things that we just don't know about yet.
That makes sense. That makes complete sense. And I think that's what a lot of people are are trying to accomplish in this field right now without the actual scientific data that goes along with it. They're trying their damnedest, though, which is very cool, to say the least. So for poltergeist activity to telepathy, you also looked into telepathic research that they were doing at the laboratory at Duke University.
I want, actually, something you said just now I think is very important. You talk about people trying to find out more who don't necessarily have like scientific degrees, and I think people like that get written off. And I think myself, to a certain degree, I have in the past written those people off, but now I feel bad about that. Like for instance, if you look at unsolved crimes, I think a lot of very important work is being done by the amateurs now. Police who don't have the time to put in to these cases are being put into people, back at their homes, like armchair, detectives. But the work they do is good. The whole field of forensic genealogy, came from amateurs, and look how important that turned out to be. All the cold cases that are now being solved because of that. Or that guy, the diver, who just solved the missing persons case. There's a bunch of divers, apparently. This is something I didn't know about, who are solving cases. So I think we should give a lot of respect to the people who don't necessarily have degrees.
Oh, I have no problem with that.
I'm not saying you don't.
Yeah.
I'm talking.
My big thing with the paranormal, supernatural, and my audience is very familiar with my words, and that is, I have a lot of people. I have a lot of detest for people who claim they are conducting scientific experimentation when they haven't conducted a scientific experiment since high school. There's no purpose, there's no procedure, there's no hypothesis, and there is no conclusion. And yet they run around saying, well, we're conducting scientific experimentation on Bigfoot or ghosts or aliens or whatever it may be. No, you're not. That's my issue with it. Look, hey, I go out ghost hunting, I go for the thrill. I'm not trying to solve anything. I go for the thrill. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of people here do that too. But there are a big load of those people who are trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. That's where I kind of get my hackles up a little bit. Hackles. I never get to use the word hackles.
That's why I told that story with the missing person, just to show the difference between the two psychics. Like Peter Herkos, the guy just taking their money, and Harold Sherman, this man of compassion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Stacy Horn is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Her website, stacyhorn.com. Telepathy. You also looked into telepathy at Duke University.
Just one other thing.
Sure.
You were talking about experiments, and I had said before how they got stalled in experiments. And one of the things that they did to try to come up with new experiments so that they could learn more about telepathy was they had, thousands and thousands and thousands of letters from people about ghost experiences that they had. So Ryan's wife, who was a scientist as well, Louisa Ryan, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Dr. Ryan. She conducted this study. I wish I could. Hang on. Okay, she gathered, because I had it right in front of me. She did a 16-year study of 30,000 ghost stories, and she was looking for patterns that would suggest new experiments that they could conduct. But in the process, one of the things that she learned was that people heard ghosts more than they saw them. They would hear things like footsteps, things moving. They would hear people talking that weren't there more than they would see them, which was something not known about ghost stories. So that was an important piece of information. But another thing that she said that she wrote about was the fact that there was nothing for most of them. There was nothing to indicate mental illness. And she brought that up for a number of reasons, like because she had narrowed down, like they had many more than 30,000 letters and ghost stories, but she was narrowing down the people who didn't give signs of mental illness. So she was trying to discount, hallucinations from schizophrenia or things like that. And so she posed a theory that it could be that hearing things is a lot more normal. Like maybe a lot of us hear things that aren't there. It isn't necessarily a sign of mental illness. It might be just a normal human experience to hear things that aren't there. And this, I didn't know this because I wasn't aware of this area of research, but that is now an accepted thing in the scientific world, that a lot of us hear things. Like hearing things is normal. And in the papers that I read, they acted like this was a brand new thing to think, but she had said it like in the 1940s.
Creepy. Very creepy. Now, when you looked into the whole telepathic side of everything, because I love this topic, we got about 4 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Have you ever tried telepathy on your own?
Well, I did the ESP test with the cards, and I could not. No skills whatsoever. Alas.
See, that is something that I am totally intrigued by, is the whole telepathic side of everything. If there was something that I wanted to learn more of, it would be trying to figure out communication, because I do believe that is something that our brains have the ability to do, but we just haven't figured it out yet.
Well, J.B. Ryan and his scientists tried very, very hard. They tried studying children. They tried studying people who couldn't see or couldn't hear, just to see if they were better at it because they couldn't see or couldn't hear. They did every group, every test, every combination they could think out, trying desperately to learn more, and they were unable to. All they could do was prove again and again that this ability exists, but they could not find anything about how to augment it or how it operated. Amplify it, I should say. So I'm sorry. It was the great frustration of his life, I'm sure.
See, I would look at that and I would say, with knowing that groups like the CIA have looked into remote viewing and different types of communication that way, I would be thinking that telepathy would be something that is really above where we need to go. And
well, they discovered the same thing. They found that they had remote viewers that saw things, but they weren't always able to verify that what they saw was true or real. And they couldn't control it, and they couldn't amplify it.
Do you think it's possible?
Telepathy?
Yes.
I think Ryan proved it. Again, his experiments in the end were done double blind. Anyone want to tell me how they could possibly have faked that? Fine. All the records are still there at Duke. They can, he proved it. And it's been proved since by other people. The Princeton lab did their own experiments. I have this also. Between 1934 and 1939, 33 replication experiments were conducted at laboratories other than Duke, and 20 of them had statistically significant results. Wow. So I should say they proved that a lot of people have a little bit of telepathic ability.
I would love to have that.
That would be a cool thing to have.
That'd be really cool. I have conducted some experiments on it with friends far away. Never works. Never.
Yeah.
But I think you have to be in like full control of your consciousness in order to do that. But anyways, Stacy, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we have you for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to continue with the weird stuff that you love so much, I love so much, and our audience loves so much. StacyHorn.com is her website. You can find all of her books there at any major bookstore or on Amazon. Spaced Out Radio is hour number 3, coming up next. All right, we are clear. I'm just going to mute my mic, no, I'm not going to mute mine because last time I forgot to turn it on when the show started. I'm just going to step away, quickly grab a bathroom break here. I'll be right back,
okay.
And I'm going to mute your mic, okay?
Okay.
All right, be right back. Sorry about that. Yes, Stacy can see your comments, Larry. She can see your comments.
I am trying to read them.
Fap says, you'll know all the Canadians invaded Vegas because you'll see all their dog sled teams at the Hotel Valet. Very true. Very true. All right, we have just a couple minutes left here.
What?
Cat's looking at you like, hey, Ma, what are you still doing awake?
See?
Mm-hmm. Doug's doing well. Hey, third phase of moon, how you guys doing, man? Yeah, that's a good one. Let's show you that. Big interview with Avi Loeb. Good for you. Hi, Terrible Times. The gorgeous Choral, how you doing? All right, we have about 90 seconds. Nicola's liking this show. Don't forget, bottom of this hour, we got the Magic 8 Ball coming up. So make sure you get all your questions ready. We'll warm it on up here soon. And I want to say a big thank you to Catfish, Thomas, and Todd tonight for the amazing super chats. It really does help what we do on Spaced Out Radio on a nightly basis. So thank you guys so much for the love and support, and all of our veterans who are tuning on in. Really appreciate you tuning us in on a nightly basis. You always have a safe home here on our channel, along with all our regulars. You guys make it so much fun. Don't forget, you can get your Spaced Out Radio swag by going to our website, clicking on the shop. We got the brand new logo up there, some great t-shirts, hoodies, even running shoes, sneakers. Yeah, how cool is that? So thank you for the support, and we're going to get going here in hour number 3 here in just a few seconds.
You just reminded me.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us, Clam? Balustraria. Balustraria is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. For the final time tonight, we introduce author Stacy Horn. StacyHorn.com is her website where you can check out all of her books. And we're talking about this weird book she has called Unbelievable: Investigations into Ghosts, Poltergeist, Telepathy, and Other Unseen Phenomena from the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory. How interesting indeed. Stacy, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Were there any topics that you noticed at the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory that really caught you off guard? You were like, really? You guys are really studying this?
No. No, I think the biggest shock for me was all that math when I first got there, again, because I don't know statistics and I didn't know, like, how am I going to do an adequate job writing about statistics without learning statistics? So I did make an effort to learn enough about statistics to at least understand what they were doing. But I'm certainly not a master at statistics. So what I did instead was, remember I talked about scientists being very rude? Well, these scientists would just like jump all over, their experiments, pointing out problems. And I would follow the back and forth, like Ryan would respond. They'd go, well, what about this? What about this? And I would just follow the tennis match of arguments until the end. And in the end, these scientists always had to concede, like the problems that they pointed out either weren't there or had been addressed. And each problem Ryan had an adequate response to. So it was always ended in a stalemate, though. Like, they wouldn't say, okay, I accept your experiment or your results. They say, okay, I accept that the problems that I pointed out weren't there. In fact, they got the guy who essentially invented statistics. What was his name? Fisher? R.A. Fisher? I may have the name wrong, but essentially the preeminent guy in statistics looked at their work and issued a statement saying, say what you will about this field, there is no problem in their math.
Did you ever look into the UFO phenomena while you were there?
Only to see if they did. And I found very, very little records of anything that they pursued in that area. I love UFOs. I want to find a UFO. I want to see a UFO. So anytime I have an opportunity like that, I do look. But I couldn't find anything really.
That surprises me. That really surprises me, considering the fact that, UFOs being such a hot button topic the last few years, and the reality that it's coming forward. I'm surprised they didn't go for that.
The only thing I can think of is, again, they did have that lab was created to find evidence for life after death.
Right.
And so they might have thought, well, this not fit into what we're here for.
Were they close to finding the reality of life after death, in your opinion?
Well, no. They certainly didn't think that they found evidence. Telepathy could be an indication that there is a possibility, but they could not answer that question definitively, no.
The Cousins brothers from Third Face of Moon are asking, do you think Project Stargate done by the CIA has been decommissioned, or do you think they're still active?
I honestly don't know. But if I would guess, I'd say it has been decommissioned, not because people wouldn't love to have that ability and to have a tool like that. I just think that they probably hit the same brick walls that everybody else does in this field. Again, not because it's valid, but because they can't control it.
So what's your thoughts then on remote viewing and the fact that the CIA delved into that, along with the fact that they may still be delving into it?
Well, I didn't look into that too much just because I was writing about the Duke Lab, but I did look into it, and I did speak to that guy. I cannot think of his name. Do you know his name? He's really well known. Like he's written about it. He was part of that.
John Alexander?
No. But anyway, and I did read the lab was in contact with I think pretty much all the arms of the military, the Navy, the Air Force. I'm not sure about the Army. Oh, I was starting to say, before we went to the break, the Air Force did build an ESP machine, by the way. And they issued a report about that in 1963. But I did read experiments that they had conducted. The Air Force hired the Duke Lab to look into, I know this isn't very sexy or interesting, but they hired the lab to figure out how pigeons honed because they thought that might be a telepathic ability. And the remote viewing experiments that I read, and these were ones that were being done, and they weren't called remote viewing at the time, I believe in the 40s and 50s. Anyway, the experiments that I read that they conducted were very exciting. So I could see why that prompted them to go into it more seriously. I can't remember specifics. Again, this has been a while, but the remote viewers were able to describe things on airplanes, and just a lot of it went over my head just because I'm not an aeronautical engineer, but what they described led the people who are aeronautic engineers to go, oh, whoa, like they revealed something about some technology that they didn't know, and they said this is very credible what they're saying to us that they're seeing.
All right. Hal Putoff, I believe, is the person you were thinking of for the remote viewing? No? Because he has been all over it, too.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Not a problem. Not a problem. Now, does the Duke Parapsychology Labs, are they tied to the federal government or any alphabet agencies regarding their research with the phenomena?
If they are now, I don't know about it. I focused on the years from the 30s to the 60s because it was a book about the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory. After that, they were on their own. But they received funding from definitely the military. From the Rockefeller Foundation, Sloan Kettering, lots of very prestigious organizations funded them. What is Sloan's name? J.P. Sloan, A.P. I'm sorry I have such a poor memory, but the man Sloan of Sloan Kettering was very big in telepathy and life after death, and he gave a lot of money to the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory, and he believed in life after death, and he had a lot of faith in J.B. Rhine.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, out of all the studies that they conducted regarding life after death, were they able, or have they been able to prove an existence that we are a continuous consciousness within each and every one of us? Maybe it's a soul. Maybe it is that, our energy transforms into something else. Are there any theories as to what is going on there?
No, I'm sorry to say no, and we still don't know what consciousness is, and they certainly weren't able to answer that question.
Darn it! I thought we may have been onto something there. I was hoping.
I went down there like I've always loved ghost stories, and I was hoping that I would go there and discover something really definitive about ghosts, and I didn't. Just that there are a lot of unanswered questions. Just like I said, like when Dr. Rhine investigated those 30,000 ghost stories, and she came up with that interesting work about hearing things. But she did say, let me see if I have it written down. She said I know it's a very small figure, but out of the 30,000 cases, she found 900 that she said she didn't want to use the word ghost. I think she called it a corporeal entity or something funny like that, because she didn't want to use you have to remember these were scientists, and they were getting disrespected all the time, and they wanted respect, so they were doing everything possible to show the world that they were serious. So they wanted to avoid terms like ghosts and come up with something more objective, like corporeal entity, which she felt sounded more objective.
What do you think about life after death? What's Stacy Horn's take on it?
I really, really hope there is, but even like my ghost experience to me isn't definitive proof of life after death. It's more likely, I think, what the Princeton scientists thought it was, possible evidence of an information field. Metaverses could be another explanation for the things that we see and hear. It's not that I don't think there is. I just think we haven't seen evidence of it. Again, incontrovertible evidence yet. Evidence that can't be explained any other way.
Do you think...
But I want to believe.
Okay, do you think then that there is a tie between the phenomena? Because a lot of researchers now, including scientists, are tending to believe that there is an invisible string, if we could call it that is sewn between everything from the paranormal to the supernatural to consciousness to UFOs to the cryptid world to psychic phenomena and everything in between.
One thing that I could never understand was, I could understand it, but the animosity towards these experiments, when anybody who took the time to look at them would see that they could not be explained away by fraud or wishful thinking or whatever. And so I called a journalist for the New York Times, I don't want to name names, but a science journalist for the New York Times. And I said, look, and I explained the situation. I said, never mind what belief. I said, these experiments are valid. Do you know any scientists who would speak to me about why they are so rejected? and so he gave me the name of a physicist, and I spoke to this physicist about it. His name is Andre Lind. Because now I can't remember exactly the quote that he gave me. But I'll have to paraphrase. But I explained, the experiments that he did and why I think that they weren't fraud, wishful thinking, whatever, or sloppy. And I said, let's say, they were all the controls were in place and they were good experiments. What do you have to say to that? For what he found? And he had written a paper that had addressed it, and I had that quote in my book, and I wish I had it in front of me, but it basically said that we don't know enough about the universe, that it is possible that these are natural phenomena that we just currently don't understand. But he said it a lot better than that. And Einstein was in contact with Upton Sinclair, who was very big into telepathy. His wife was, actually. And Einstein was extremely skeptical and condescending. Not condescending, but kind of didn't want to talk about it, deal with it. But he did read the book that was sent to him, and he said, your book has somewhat convinced me that we should not go through life with blinders on when it came to this subject.
Do you believe in life after death? I know you want to.
No, there's nothing that convinces me right now that there is life after death. And believe me, that depresses me no end.
Okay, so let's say Stacy Horn.
But I'm anxious and open mind and hoping someone succeeds to come up with evidence.
So I want to ask you then regarding regarding the phenomena of near-death experiences and what people believe. Have you ever looked into that?
Yeah, that's some really good, compelling stuff. Yeah, I wrote about some of them. I wrote a piece about reincarnation. And what was that guy's Stafford Betty But I wrote about some of the doctors who had looked into near-death experiences, and that was very exciting. But I'll tell you, in the course of my research into that, I almost want to not believe it, because not everybody who has a near-death experience has a good one. So
true.
If there's life after death, it could be horrible for some.
Very true. Very true. And, you hope it's not traumatic on the other side, but maybe it's also a wake-up call, like the religious side of people say, where you got to clean up your life, make your own bed, start treating people better to change the potential outcome of life eternally in hell. I don't know.
Well, I don't believe that whole way of looking at it. I don't believe someone, like there's a judge, and like I don't believe in a criminal justice system that in the afterlife like that. It doesn't sound good or compassionate. If there's a supreme being, that being is better than that.
Well, I would agree with you there on a lot of interesting points. And I look at it this way. I have no problem admitting that I am a believer in God. But I think my faith comes from having a number of experiences that I can't explain. But number two, I think it's easier for me to believe in that and the hope of that rather than the hope of darkness and one and done, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And, it's like you only get one shot at hitting a home run in baseball. And if you swing and miss, you're out. It's kind of profound.
Yeah.
We should have went into this conversation earlier. We have 2.5 minutes left with you tonight, Stacy Horn, and it has been absolutely wonderful in getting to know you and hearing your amazing books. I know you have a bunch more books on there that we didn't even touch on, but I love your skepticism and you're clear-minded. You're not closed-minded like a lot of skeptics are. You're very clear-minded, in everything, and I think that needs to be commended.
Thank you. And you are a great interviewer. It was a pleasure being on your show.
It's the power of the hair. That's what it is. Could you do me a favor? Like I said, we got about 2 minutes left. Do us a favor. Tell everybody about your books, where they can find them, and what's on your website.
Actually, if you go to... I'm sorry, I've been not following the chat because I've been looking at Dave while I speak to him. But if you just go to my website, stacyhorn.com, there's a link, my books, and all of them are listed there. And you can look and see if there are any that you might be interested in to buy. My most recent book, which I didn't get to talk about, Damnation Island, I think might be up the alley of some of your readers. It's based on this island, Blackwell's Island, which is now called Roosevelt Island. And in the 19th century, it was used for a lunatic asylum and a bunch of prisons. And it reads like a horror story, what I learned happened on this island. I mean, it's just all your worst nightmares come true. And everyone meant well, but it came out very, very badly.
Oh, wow.
Oh, God, I didn't make that sound inviting at all.
Oh, it made it sound intriguing. Made it sound very intriguing. Any new books coming in the future?
Well, I hope so. I'm working on a proposal for my next book, and I'm going to send that out in January, and hopefully a publisher will go, yeah, we'll write that for us. But I don't know yet. But it was based on while I was writing the Restless Sleep, I learned which parts of New York have the highest number of unsolved murders.
Oh, wow.
And so I identified where the neighborhood in New York that has the most unsolved murders. And so I started looking into why. And I uncovered a white-collar crime which devastated the neighborhood. And I've always been looking for the book to write to show that white-collar crime is as destructive and more destructive than street crime. And this book will be it.
Well, we look forward to that. We'll bring you back on when that is written. Stacy Horn, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio. In the next half hour, we're going to warm up the Magic 8 Ball. We're going to get a little psychic with you. Get your questions ready. And we got Shirky Poo's news and the thought of the day. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio returns after this. Great show. That was
Thank
fun.
you. I had so much fun.
I'm so glad. That was a blast. Just a blast. Thank you so much for that.
I appreciate you appreciating my stories. I had fun telling them.
No problem. No problem. We appreciate you taking the time. I know it's late for you, and your cats are like, Mom, let's go to bed. It's tiring time. It's bedtime. But we appreciate you coming on in. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, my friend, and appreciate you.
Okay. Will you log me out?
I'm going to log you right out right now.
Okay.
Take care, Stacy. All right. Let's get her there. There she goes. That was a fun show. Fun show. I liked her. Fantastic interview. Radio, how you doing? Good to see you. All right. She was pleasant. Very energetic. What's happening over there, Gong Show? Hey, Thin Lizzy. I don't know if you heard me earlier about on the TikTok. Could you put up that latest Mars photo? Get some public opinion on that, whether or not it's a crash site of a UFO on Mars, if you don't mind. I'd appreciate that. All right, don't forget that April 22nd to 24th, we're going to be gathering in Las Vegas, Nevada, for a weekend of SOR partying and fun. No, it's not a conference. No, it's nothing with a schedule. It's about all of us getting together for a weekend of chilling and having fun in Vegas. Now, Lynn Wallington and I are going to make up the itinerary here pretty quick of where we're going to meet and what's going to go on and so forth. But we want to make sure that we have some good times with you guys. We've been calling for it for a couple of years, and damn it, now it is time to do so. We know the dates, April 22nd to 24th. I'm probably going to go down on the 21st, which is a Thursday, and leave on the Monday morning, so we can check it on out and hang on out. And I'm going to bring in some friends and some former guests of the show who not only live in Vegas, but maybe surrounding areas to come up and join us and just have a big party. Now, once we get the official announcement going, what I want you to do is we're going to put an email on it. And when you confirm that you are going to be there in Vegas, we're going to make sure that there is a special package there for you. Because we want to make sure that you guys go home with some swag as well. So thank you, and stay in touch. We're probably going to be on the Strip somewhere. And KYG Adventures, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and thank you. We love our oracles and beyond here. We're going to work out the details very quickly here, Teresa. So it's going to be a lot of fun once we get it worked out. I don't know if Samantha's coming. She will be invited. If she makes it, she makes it. If she doesn't, she doesn't. But we'll figure it out. And I know Lynn Wallington's going to be there. I know some of our radio station heads are going to be there. We're going to try and, like I said, bring in some other guests. So during the day, you guys can do whatever you want. Whatever you want. It's Vegas, right? Sit by the pool, drive out to Area 51, whatever you feel. But during the night, oh, that's when we come together and we hang out. And we'll take some pictures, we'll have some fun, and that's what we're going to do. Go to a place with some good music, and just enjoy a good weekend of woo in Vegas. Who's with me? Let's make it happen. April 22nd to 24th next year. And like I said, once the big offer goes up, I want to, I expect there to be anywhere between 20 and 50 people there. That's what I expect. Could be more, could be less, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We're giving you ample time to save, just in case. Because I know I'm going to have to save. And we kind of go from there. All right. Thank you to Catfish, Thomas, and Todd for the super chats tonight. Really appreciate it. We're going to get going here in about 5 seconds. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Bree is doing a fantastic job getting our videos up there as well. You know what it's time for? Let's get a little psychic, shall we? Yes, it's time once again for the Magic 8 Ball, where you in our YouTube chat will ask some questions, and we're going to get the 8 Ball to answer them. Because the 8 Ball is usually pretty accurate, can be a little sarcastic at times, depending on your questions and the tone that maybe I ask of it. But you know what the one thing about it is? Rarely ever wrong. So the Magic 8 Ball tonight is brought to you by me, because I just wanted to bring it to you. So there's our sponsor tonight, me. Here we go. Nicola has the first question here. Will I get a remote car starter from my kids for Christmas? The Magic 8 Ball says, by the way, infinitely yes. You will finally get the remote start for your vehicle. That way it'll be nice and toasty after 10 minutes of warming up. And then you also get an extra 10 minutes if you have to restart it. But that's okay. That's what works for us. Okay, moving on here. Let us go to Brazelhoff. Magic 8 Ball, will 2022 be a more positive year for life for Americans? Please, dear God, say something nice, Magic 8 Ball. Well, how about the rest of the world? I'm in Canada, man. Can we include Canada on this? How about North America? Are you okay with that? Magic 8 Ball says, batteries low. Uh-oh. Batteries, do you mean that, Magic 8 Ball? Hold on. Come on, do you mean that? Don't count on it. Oh, great. Better not cancel the Spaced Out Radio party, April 22nd to 24th in Las Vegas. All right. Let's go over to Melissa. Magic 8 Ball, should I dump the jerk I am dating currently? Oh my. Oh my. Not today, Sheriff. Magic 8 Ball wants you to hold on for just a couple of weeks here. At least get the Christmas presents out of them. Be a little selfish. Give him a smooch on New Year's, and then after New Year, new you, Melissa. New year, you. Now, if he screws you on Christmas, not literally, but figuratively, all right, out of any good gifts, and that came out totally wrong, all right, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to get rid of him before New Year's, because he probably won't brush his teeth before going in for that New Year's smooch. Just my opinion. All right? Boy, that came out wrong. Wow. Mennonite Abe, will there be debauchery at the SOR Las Vegas party? Levels are positive that it's going to be badass. Levels are positive. All right, Larry wants to know, Magic 8 Ball, is there life after death? My sources say no. Really? Wow. That was pretty candid and quick of the 8 Ball there. Wow. Well, it doesn't give us much to look forward to. More reason to go to the Vegas SOR party, April 22nd to 24th. Hairless Primate is asking, will I ever grow any hair? Out of fuel. Try again later. Not today, man. Nope, you're going to be bald through the winter. You might get a good summer coat, but it's going to be thin. It's going to be thin. All right, let's move on to Spooky here. Will Spooky make it to Vegas 2022 SOR Woo Party? Well, let's see here. Reply hazy, try again. Probably because we're 5 months away. Let's try again. It wants us to try again. We're going to try again, Spooky. It is decidedly so. It is decidedly so. Thin Lizzy is asking, will I run into money for Las Vegas? Infinitely yes, Spooky. Or pardon me, Thin Lizzy. Thin Lizzy, I apologize. Infinitely yes. All right. Michael Leger, the Michael Leger, is asking, all right, will Dave have a conversation with an alien? Don't count on it. Maybe my days are done. Maybe I've communicated enough. No more Carl. No more aliens. No more abductions. In a way, that would kind of suck. I got a lot of questions. Oh, I hate questions about me. Choral, should I come and move overseas closer to the SOR ufology family? The answer is, without the Magic 8 Ball, yes, yes you should. Here we go. Levels are positive that you should make the move and come to the Vegas party, Choral. At least come for that. You will enjoy that. All right. What else do we have here for the Magic 8 Ball? Well, let's see here. Let's see. David Lopez wants to know, will I be abducted by aliens? Hey, David Lopez, how you doing, man? Let's see here. The answer is, don't count on it. You don't got what the aliens have. Or need. You're lucky. You don't want that stuff, man. You don't want it. Maybe seeing an alien, sure. But you don't want the abductions, man. Trust me on that one. All right, Felipe. Will the SOR crew ever come with me to hunt some chupacabra and have it for dinner? Felipe, that sounds awesome, man. As I see it, yes, says the Magic 8 Ball. As I see it, yes. Felipe, let's do this thing, man. Let's do this thing. How about that? Melissa wants to know, will Chad Smith, the Chad Smith, buy her a plane ticket to go to the Vegas party? Don't count on it. He could be Ukrainian at times. No, the real answer to that is Chad Smith doesn't fly. He's like Mr. T. He doesn't like to fly, but he may drive with you, Melissa. See? His next words to you, Melissa, I'm not even buying a plane ticket to Vegas. No, but you may drive, my friend. You may drive. Let's go to the next question here. Choral wants to know, will I meet the little gray I saw in my dream? Are you sure it was a dream, Choral? Signs point to yes. Signs point to yes. Pinzer. Will the SOR Vegas travelers have a group of paranormal or alien experiences? Some of us are hoping. Levels are positive that we're going to get some woo down there, Pinzer. I know you're new. Are you coming to Vegas with us? April 22nd to 24th. Shameless plug again. All right? Let us know. Sandra on Vancouver Island. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Will I get to see the asteroid going by in the sky? I want to see that too. Problem is, all we've had is snow clouds recently. Can't see any stars. Batteries are low. In other words, it's going to be dim, Sandra. It's going to be very dim, but you got to get up early for this one. You got to get up early. Otherwise, catch it the next time around in 50,000 years, Sandra. It's one way you can look at it. Mennonite Abe is asking, that Mars photo with the potential UFO crash site, is it a UFO? Don't count on it. Of course. You know, everybody's breaking our hearts right now, including the Magic 8 Ball, and whether or not that is an actual UFO. Actual UFO. I don't know. All right, Sovereign wants to know, will Samantha Mowat be in Vegas for the party? You have my pity. I don't think she's coming. But she might. You don't know. I'll ask her. We'll see. I'm going to try and gather a list of people who are going to join us there, too. Brazelhoff wants to know, did Chad Smith used to play guitar for the band POD? No, and he's not the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. This is our own special Chad Smith that we have. And the answer is, levels are positive. Oh, maybe he did. I think the Magic 8 Ball is being a little sarcastic there. Joe wants to know if he'll get off the no-flies list before Vegas. Dude, it's within driving distance of your house. Get that 72, or maybe 76. Yeah, it's a 76 El Camino. Throw some gas in it. Change the oil. You can do it, Joe. Battery's low. Probably not. You're going to have to drive, Joe. You're going to have to drive. And then we will see you there. All right. Let's see. How many other questions do we have here? Let's see. Scrolling down the chat room here. So far, we're so good. I'm going to ask myself a question. Magic 8 Ball. In 2022, will I have another encounter with a Sasquatch? Or at least find a... No, I want to find a Sasquatch print or a Sasquatch. Will I have another encounter? Answer is, in hypersleep. Probably not. I'm going to have to wait till 2023. I'll ask again. Chad Smith is saying, I'll rent a party bus and drive from Michigan. Anyone in the Chad path on the way, I'll pick you up. See, that's a good team player right there, Chad Smith. That's a good team player right there. You make sure that happens. All right. Choral, will the gnome behind Dave ever come to life, Magic 8 Ball? The answer is all clear. It just might. It just might. Really? Oh. Oops. Don't want to knock that off. Almost had an accident right here in the studio. There we go. Let's see here. Do we have any more questions from our audience? Michael Leger, why do I do this? Let's find out. Levels are positive. You do it because it's positive. Makes you feel good, Michael. Whatever this is, you make it happen. Melissa wants to know, will Dave get in on the Black Friday action in 2022? You may rely on it. No, you know what? After 2 years of disappointment, of horrible Black Fridays, not a lot of videos, no blood, no kicking, no spearing, no tripping, no running over people, no punching in the face, no brass knuckles, no sabers or swords, no daggers, no pushing, no shoving, no ripping toys out of kids' hands. Very, very disappointing the last 2 years. Stop with the online shopping, people. Stop with that. Get to your mall, especially on Black Friday in America, and start brawling again. I'm giving you one more opportunity in 2022 because the last couple of years have been highly disappointing. All right, KYG Adventures, new to our channel, is asking, will more people like my content in 2022? Ask again later is the answer. Ask again later. So it's still figuring that out. It's really about the amount of work you want to put into it. If you put in the work, you figure out the algorithms, boom, take off. That's what we did. Mennonite Abe is asking, can we cater in Taco Bell for the Vegas party? Magic 8 Ball doesn't even answer that. It says my sources say no, but that's crap because there is Uber Eats and we can get them tacos anywhere. Don't you worry about that. We will get Taco Bell in Vegas. 100%. We got time for about one or two more here. Let's go to David Lopez. Will Mr. Sasquatch be his guest speaker in Vegas? Probably not. Levels are positive. Really? How's he going to get there? He doesn't fly. He's got to walk from northern Nevada. No, that ain't happening. Come on, Magic 8 Ball. Now you're starting to play games. And finally, the last one of the night, Brasilov. Will I get a new band with better bandmates in 2022? Censors read no. No. 2023, though, man, that's your year. That's your year. I got another guitarist for you, by the way. My little guy. He's ready to rock. Almost. But he's got the power chords down, and that's all you need for some juicy, heavy metal. Shirky Poo has the news all set up for us. Let's start off right now where it shouldn't come as any surprise that beauty contestants often get some plastic surgery done. And why wouldn't they? It's not like the Miss Universe contest, for example, prohibits a little nip and tuck. But an incident in Saudi Arabia, however, has really hit the fan. Why? That's because animal beauty contests are much stricter. And this is why they have cracked down on artificially touched up camels. The organizers of the King Abdul Aziz Camel Festival banned more than 40 camels for plastic surgery. Their owners had gone to extreme lengths to make their animals prettier. Authorities found multiple cases where owners had stretched out the camels' lips and noses using Botox injections, rubber bands, and subdermal fillers. In addition, some owners had even given the camels hormones to boost their musculature. The club is keen to halt all acts of tampering and deception in this beautification of camels, the authorities said. How about animal abuse? Never mind beautification. How about animal abuse there? Come on. I mean, it's kind of obvious. It's kind of obvious if you ban 40 camels. The founder and billionaire behind Coinbase, an American cryptocurrency company, is now looking to cure aging and is using machine learning to do so. Brian Armstrong recently announced his new epigenetic reprogramming company called New Limit, which aims to make therapies that reverse the aging process. According to a press release from the company, New Limit will start by deeply interrogating epigenetic drivers of aging and developing products that can regenerate tissues to treat specific patient populations. Armstrong plans to employ machine learning to determine what cell features change as we age in order to create therapies that could slow, halt, or reverse the process. However, New Limit is still in the concept stage, but Armstrong says the company's founders, which includes Stanford PhD Blake Byers, have committed $105 million to get it off the ground. Boy, wouldn't Avi Loeb like to have that kind of money for UFOs? A group of Maryland women are trying to get the Supreme Court to roll back a ban against topless sunbathing in a small beachside town. 5 women petitioned the nation's highest court to review a local law in Ocean City, Maryland, that prohibits women, but not men, from sunbathing topless on its beaches. In 2017, Ocean City passed a law banning women from exposing their chests at the beach after one of the plaintiffs, named Chelsea Eileen, complained to local law enforcement that she had a right to go topless. A year later, Eileen, along with 4 other women, filed a lawsuit against the city, arguing that the ban violated their constitutional rights. In August, a 3-judge panel of the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Apples in Richmond, Virginia, ruled that the ban was constitutional. The panel noted that courts across the U.S. have upheld such measures and denied petitioners' request to hear the case. Ocean City is within their rights to impose such a ban in order to protect public sensibilities, said one of the panel members, Judge A. Marvin Quattlebaum. Yeah, isn't he a stiff guy? Wow. Come on, let them free. Let them sunbathe. It's all good. Make it happen. Let's get to the thought of the day. What famous person's death caught your attention and why? Kenneth, John Bonham, I knew exactly where I was. Connor, Mac Miller, he was my age. Gail, John F. Kennedy Jr. in high school. In my American history class, his death changed my generation forever. Gary, Kurt Cobain, I wasn't a Nirvana fan, more of a Melvins fan at the time, but I was in junior high and the next day people were all crying in the halls. Becky, Michael Jackson, just broke my heart. Carol, Marilyn Monroe, she was a victim in so many ways, in life and in death. Prince, for Thin Lizzy, he was a member of my congregation. Forced growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, everyone from Minneapolis has a story about him. Bobby, Hans Gruber, he died when he fell off the Nakatomi Plaza. Foul play is suspected. Bill, Ronnie James Dio, very inspiring to me during my teens. Robin Williams for Kara. You just never know what people are going through. That's where we're going to leave it right there. Thank you for everybody going through the thought of the day. We really appreciate that. Thank you to Shirky Poo for the news. Everyone playing along with the Magic 8 Ball. And, of course, Stacy Horn, a fantastic guest tonight for you guys to check out. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, Twitch, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, say it with me, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night.